The scream that tore through my chest didn't make it past my lips. I stood frozen, keys still dangling in my hand, eyes locked on the scene unfolding in front of my house on my front lawn. My daughter, my baby girl, was on her knees, palms scraping against the harsh concrete, crawling. Crawling. She wasn't playing. She wasn't pretending. Her wheelchair, custom-made, lightweight, bright purple frame, was tipped over near the curb like discarded garbage. And there, standing tall with arms crossed and an ugly satisfaction spread across her face, was Karen. HOA President Karen. Her mouth moved as she barked orders, but I couldn't hear the words. My ears were ringing. My legs felt nailed to the earth. My daughter's soft jacket dragged across the rough path. She hesitated, looked up at Karen, frightened, confused, desperate, and then kept crawling. My heart cracked into pieces right there in the driveway. I rushed forward, finally snapping out of my paralysis. "Hey, what are you doing?" My voice came out louder than I expected, booming, raw, like thunder rumbling from years of silence. Karen turned, startled at first, but quickly masked it with her signature smugness. She was blocking the HOA path. "It's not wheelchair accessible, and your daughter's been warned about that before," she snapped, as if my child were some serial trespasser instead of a 9-year-old with spina bifida who just wanted to pick dandelions near the mailbox. "She's a child," I said through gritted teeth, kneeling beside my daughter and cradling her. Her face was smeared with tears and dirt. "You made her crawl like a dog." "She didn't have to," Karen shrugged, gesturing toward the tipped-over wheelchair. "She chose to." That was the moment something ancient inside me stirred. Not rage, not revenge, something colder, sharper. My instincts as a father collided with my training as something more, something Karen had no clue about. I glanced once at my daughter, then back at Karen, who stood there, arms still crossed, lips pursed, head tilted with arrogance. She didn't even blink when I said, quietly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Are you threatening me?" I stood up slowly. "No," I said calmly. "I don't need to. Because you see, there are lines. Lines that no HOA policy, no neighborhood rule, no puffed-up Karen gets to cross. My daughter was never going to be the same after this moment. But neither was she. Karen thought she was just putting a neighbor in their place. She didn't realize she'd just dragged a disabled child through humiliation in front of the wrong man. A man who doesn't just understand what child abuse looks like. A man who's been fighting it his entire career. A man who's sworn to protect children no matter who hurts them. She had no idea who I really was, but she was about to find out. There was a time not long ago when I thought I'd finally found peace. A little slice of calm in a chaotic world. After years of chasing monsters through the child protection system, witnessing the worst humanity had to offer, I had begun to believe maybe, just maybe, our family had earned a quiet life, a routine, a community, a home. We moved into Willow Creek Estates in early spring. The grass was still growing in, and the scent of new beginnings hung in the air like magnolia blossoms. It was the kind of neighborhood you read about in glossy real estate brochures, trimmed hedges, wide sidewalks, community barbecues in the park. The promise of safety and smiles. And for me, more than anything, it offered flat, accessible sidewalks, smooth curb cutouts, and a wheelchair-friendly park just 3 blocks down. That was my checklist, not the school ratings, not the square footage. Just one thing. Could my daughter live here with dignity? Her name is Lily. She was born smiling. I say that not as a poetic exaggeration, but as fact. Even when the doctors delivered the news, spina bifida, lower spinal malformation, a lifetime of surgeries and mobility challenges, she looked up at me, blinked with those big hazel eyes, and grinned. A little fighter. My light. My reason. From the start, Lily defied every limit they set for her. She learned to transfer herself into her chair by age 4. By 5, she was helping other kids on the playground adjust to her presence, teaching them how to play tag with her, wheel around obstacles, use chalk from her lap. She didn't want pity. She wanted to race. She wanted to dance. She wanted to belong. And so, When we finally got the chance to buy a home, I scoured listings like a man possessed. Most houses failed the first glance. Stairs to the front door, gravel driveways, steep inclines. But Willow Creek was different. It had ramps, level lots, wide porches. There was even an annual Easter egg hunt where volunteers hid eggs low to the ground and within reach for children in chairs. It felt, miraculously, like someone had thought of families like ours. I fell in love with that idea more than the house itself. Our first months, they were blissful in a way I hadn't dared to expect. Lily made a new best friend across the street. Emmy, whose freckles rivaled the stars and whose kindness knew no bounds. The two were inseparable, trading bracelets and silly songs, wheeling through puddles and crafting sidewalk art that always drew smiles from the joggers. Every morning, I packed Lily's bag with care, therapy appointments, water bottles, books, and wheeled her to the corner where the school bus had a custom ramp and a smiling driver who greeted her by name. I'd come back inside, pour my second cup of coffee, and head into the study to begin my remote shifts. Working as a child protection officer isn't a job you clock out of easily, but I'd carved a boundary now. My caseload was lighter. I was mentoring new officers, writing policy recommendations. The darkness I'd witnessed for so many years still lingered in the back of my mind, like ghosts behind the curtains, but here they couldn't touch us. My wife, Mel, was the heart of our home. She had a calmness I envied, always knew when Lily needed silence and when she needed distraction. When Lily's legs would cramp at night, Mel would lie beside her, humming lullabies until the tremors passed. She was the softness to my vigilance, the warmth to Lily's fire. We were a trio, a triangle of resilience, love, and quiet survival. Weekends became sacred. We had a little ritual. Saturday mornings were pajama breakfast on the deck, pancakes with strawberries, whipped cream mustaches, birdsong in the background. Sometimes Lily would challenge me to a race, me on foot, her in her wheels, down the smooth driveway. She always won. She laughed like thunder when she did, lifting her arms as if soaring. I lived for that sound, that joy. It told me I'd made the right choice, brought her somewhere safe. The neighbors, for the most part, welcomed us warmly. A retired couple brought cookies. A young teacher down the block waved every morning. Lily even got invited to a birthday party, her first one where she wasn't given the special seat in the corner treatment. They made space. They saw her. But in every bright picture, there's a corner where shadows gather unnoticed. Ours came in the form of Karen. At first, she was just a name on the HOA newsletter. Karen T., president. I assumed she was the kind of woman who organized flower planting competitions and managed noise complaints. I wasn't entirely wrong, but I was unprepared for how small power in the wrong hands could twist into cruelty. She introduced herself during our first week with a clipboard in hand and a thin smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We just ask all new residents to review the community standards, she said, tapping the laminated page, especially regarding outdoor equipment and common areas. Her gaze flicked to Lily's ramp and modified handrails. I nodded politely, took the sheet, thanked her. She walked away briskly, not bothering to crouch and greet Lily like the others had. Just a cold glance, then nothing. I didn't think much of it then. Not every neighbor becomes a friend. That's just life. But little signs began to show. Notes left on our door. Please remove items from sidewalk obstruction. Even though the sidewalk in question was clear, an email to the HOA group thread. Let's ensure our front yards maintain a consistent aesthetic, especially visible medical devices. No names, but we knew who it was aimed at. Still, we brushed it off. I'd seen real cruelty. This was annoyance. Pettiness. Surely it would pass. Lily didn't notice it at first. She was too busy living. She joined the garden club at school. She started making TikToks about accessible fashion. She taught Emmy how to maneuver her chair and do a spin. She even built a small flower bed with Mel along the side of the house, planting yellow tulips because they look like sunshine. Her world was still intact. And mine was too, until it wasn't. Looking back, there were warnings, passive-aggressive remarks during HOA meetings about certain residents drawing too much attention. Karen glancing at Lily during the neighborhood picnic when someone tripped over a curb cutout and muttered something about special treatment. The day I overheard Karen say to another board member, if they can't live like everyone else, maybe this isn't the right place for them. That sentence echoed in my brain for days. I tried to let it go. I told myself she didn't mean it, that she was just a bitter woman clinging to control. But a storm was gathering. I didn't realize we were standing at the center of it until it struck, and when it did, when she crossed a line so vile, so humiliating, so cruel, I understood something I hadn't in all my years of protecting children. Sometimes the monster doesn't hide in the dark. Sometimes it wears pearls, leads neighborhood meetings, and calls itself president. But that would come later. For now, I want you to remember this. We were happy. My daughter laughed. My wife sang. We danced in the kitchen on quiet Sundays. We made snow angels in the front yard. We believed, truly, that we were home. We were wrong. But we believed. And maybe that's what makes what happened next so hard to forgive. Because when someone shatters the world you built with love, they don't just hurt you. They unmake something sacred, something irreplaceable. And they never see it coming when the quiet man next door turns out to be something else entirely. It started with a note, a pale, yellow sticky plastered on our mailbox, curling slightly at the edges from morning dew. It read, in blocky, angry handwriting, please don't leave medical equipment in view. This is a community, not a hospital. No name, no signature, just cruelty scribbled like it had been spat through ink. I stood there holding it in my hand, heart pounding, unsure whether to laugh at the absurdity or scream. The equipment in question was Lily's portable wheelchair ramp, folded neatly at the edge of the porch, tucked beside a potted plant, just like we always did. We used it daily to wheel her in and out. It wasn't clutter. It wasn't blocking anything. But apparently to someone it was offensive. An eyesore. A reminder of something imperfect. I didn't show it to Lily. Not yet. She was inside, working on her homework, singing along softly to Taylor Swift, and chewing on her pencil. She didn't need that darkness invading her peace. Not when she was finally starting to feel like this neighborhood was home. But I had a strong suspicion who left the note. And it wasn't long before my suspicion turned into certainty. 2 days later, I was adjusting the ramp when I heard a voice from behind me, sharp, clipped, and wrapped in that fake sweetness some people use when they're about to say something truly ugly. Morning. Karen chirped. She was wearing a crisp, cream-colored tracksuit and holding a clipboard like it was a badge. Hope you got the little reminder. We're just trying to keep things pleasant for everyone. I turned slowly, nodding. If you mean the sticky note, yes, I got it. Her smile tightened. Good. You understand, I'm sure. We're a uniform community. Visual consistency helps property values. And some residents have voice concerns. Some residents, I repeated flatly. Or just you. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. I represent the board. I hear all voices. I took a breath, trying to keep calm. That ramp is for my daughter. She needs it. It's not a lawn ornament. Karen tilted her head, almost pityingly. And I sympathize. But perhaps there are ways to store it where it's not visible from the street. We have design standards for a reason. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because I knew this wasn't about design or aesthetics. This was about her discomfort with anything that didn't fit her tidy little world. She walked off without waiting for a reply. Days passed and more notes came. Some were typed, some anonymous. One was stuffed in our mailbox without postage, warning that non-compliant items may result in fines. Another stated that children playing near the sidewalks must stay within designated areas, likely aimed at Lily and Emmy chalk drawing outside the lines. The message was always the same: erase yourselves, blend in, disappear. Then came the parking complaint. I came home one afternoon to find a fluorescent orange warning tag slapped across the windshield of our van. Unauthorized parking. Vehicle violates HOA guidelines for street appearance. The van, specially modified for Lily's wheelchair lift, was parked directly in front of our home, in our own spot, not blocking driveways, not extending into fire lanes, but apparently too visible, too different. I filed a formal response citing ADA protections, explaining the necessity. But Karen, of course, wasn't interested in explanations. The next HOA meeting, she stood in front of the circle of chairs in the community clubhouse and said with a pleasant laugh, "Of course, we all want to be inclusive, but there are limits, and some things just don't belong curbside. It creates a message." I raised my hand. "And what message is that, Karen?" She didn't answer, but her silence was louder than words. Still, we endured. For Lily's sake, for Emmy's friendship, for the semblance of a peaceful life. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we didn't give her fuel, the fire would die out. But then came the moment I knew we had crossed the line from discomfort into something more sinister. It was late afternoon. Lily had come home from school excited to show us the clay model she'd made in art class, a tiny dog with floppy ears and googly eyes. She wanted to place it in the flower bed. "He's going to guard my tulips," she said proudly. I helped her wheel outside while Mel prepared dinner, and Lily carefully nestled the little figurine between two blooms. We were laughing when Karen's voice sliced the air like a knife. "Excuse me." She stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, eyes locked on Lily. "That's not allowed." I blinked. "What?" "That," she said, pointing at the clay dog, "is an unapproved lawn ornament." Lily looked up at her, puzzled. "It's just a puppy." Karen stepped closer. "You can't put personal items in view of public areas. It's in the bylaws. Page 4. You can check." I stood up, stepping between them. "It's a 2-inch clay dog, made by a child." Karen didn't flinch. Rules are rules. If we make exceptions for one person, everyone wants one. That's how standards fall. Lily's smile faltered. "But I made it for the flowers." Karen leaned forward slightly, gaze level with Lily's. And then she said it, the sentence that would wedge itself into my soul forever. "If you can't follow the rules like everyone else," she said coldly, "maybe you shouldn't be outside." My heart stopped. Mel heard it from the window and came rushing out. I placed my hand on Lily's shoulder as she looked down, blinking quickly, trying not to cry in front of a stranger. That was the line. Not the notes. Not the fines. Not even the threats. That sentence. That casual erasure of my daughter's existence. A disabled child being told she didn't belong outdoors. And the woman who said it had no idea what kind of fire she just lit. She had no idea that the man standing before her wasn't just a father. She had no idea she had just crossed a line no apology could ever erase. And I promise you, she was about to find out exactly who I was. I thought it would stop after that moment in the garden, that after a grown woman told my 9-year-old disabled daughter she didn't belong outside, some invisible moral compass might finally snap inside her chest. That maybe shame would creep in. That maybe someone on the HOA board would whisper, "That was too far, Karen." But I was wrong. Because Karen wasn't just a bully. She was obsessed with control, with order, with power. And when she couldn't silence us through passive notes or bylaws, she started reaching for something darker. She escalated. It began subtly at first: paperwork, complaints, procedural pettiness. Suddenly, we were being cited for violations we didn't understand. Excessive sidewalk use was one. Another accused us of violating community decorum for leaving Lily's chalk drawings overnight on the driveway. Her rainbow-colored stars and flower doodles, innocent, joyful things, were labeled graffiti. We received official warnings. The letters were cold, typed in Times New Roman, signed Willow Creek HOA, with no specific name, but we knew. Karen had weaponized the system. Then she started calling city code enforcement. I remember the day the city then showed up. A man in a tucked-in polo knocked on the door, holding a clipboard. "Just following up on a complaint," he said. "We received a report of improper residential modifications to a structure." I blinked. "What structure?" He pointed to the ramp. The same folding ramp we'd used every single day since we moved in. The one we declared in our application received HOA approval for in writing and had carefully measured to remain within all local code. Apparently, Karen was now claiming we'd violated municipal zoning laws. We pulled up the emails, sent them to the city office. The man left apologetically, but the message was clear. She was going beyond HOA now. She was bringing the state into it. Even worse, she was turning the neighborhood. People started looking at us differently. The friendly nods became shorter. The hellos stopped. Emmy's mom once casually mentioned that maybe we shouldn't get too comfortable with Lily playing on the greenbelt since it technically wasn't part of our yard. I saw Karen at the center of it all, chatting, whispering, sowing discomfort like poison into people who used to smile at us. But the worst part was watching Lily fade. She stopped playing outside. She stopped decorating the porch with stickers or lining up her action figures on the railing. She asked me quietly one night, "Daddy, are we doing something wrong?" My chest shattered. "No, baby," I said. "We're doing everything right. You're perfect. This house is ours. We're allowed to be here." But I could see her light dimming, her confidence faltering. She clung closer to Mel. She hesitated before going out the front door. She asked to stop going to the park altogether. "She watches me," Lily whispered one day. I crouched down. "Who watches you?" She didn't say it. She just tilted her head toward the window. Karen's window. Across the street. Always watching. Mel tried to keep things normal, made Lily's favorite foods, baked cookies for the neighbors, even joined the monthly HOA potluck just to keep up appearances. But Karen never backed off. She started visiting the school. That was the final straw. One Thursday, I received a call from Lily's principal. "We've had a conversation with a member of your HOA," he said, hesitantly, regarding Lily's behavior at the bus stop. "Apparently, there's concern that she's unsupervised." I was stunned. I walked her there every morning. Every single morning. And when I couldn't, Mel did. I asked for the name. Of course, Karen. She had told the school my daughter was at risk of being struck by vehicles because of how her wheelchair swung wide on the curb. Swing wide, like she was a forklift. I requested an emergency meeting. We cleared things up, the principal apologized, but the damage was done. Karen wasn't just trying to push us out now, she was trying to manufacture danger around us. She wanted us to look negligent, dangerous, unfit. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Monday. Mel had taken a call and asked Lily if she wanted to roll down to the community mailbox herself, just a few feet away, flat sidewalk, fully visible from our living room window. Lily nodded excitedly. "I can do it alone, Mom," she said proudly. "I'm big now." Mel smiled, kissed her forehead, and watched her go. Lily rolled smoothly down the ramp and headed toward the boxes, a little purple envelope in her lap. She had written a letter to her cousin, decorated with glittery cats. We would later piece together what happened from the neighbors' ring footage and Lily's tearful words. Karen was already standing there. She had parked herself near the mailbox like she was waiting. She stepped forward as Lily approached, holding a paper in her hand. Some HOA rule print, no doubt. The footage showed her pointing at the curb, gesturing, speaking sternly. Lily tried to back away. Karen blocked her. And then, according to Lily, she said this: "If you insist on using this space, you'll need to get down and do it the proper way. No chair. Rules are rules." And then she reached forward, grabbed the back handles of Lily's chair, and tipped it. She tipped it. She tipped my daughter out of her chair. She hit the ground with her hands first, scraped, bruised, but didn't scream. She said Karen told her, "Crawl if you must, but don't think being special makes you exempt." And so Lily crawled. She crawled back toward our house, dragging her little body, sobbing. The ring camera showed her shaking, trying to pick herself up. One knee forward, then the other, elbows tucked. Her face was red, her clothes dusty. The envelope with the cats was left behind. I wasn't home when it happened. Mel screamed when she saw Lily crawling. She ran out and lifted her daughter into her arms, sobbing, called me, called the police, called everyone. When I arrived, I saw the blood on Lily's palms and knees, and for the first time in over 15 years, I nearly blacked out from rage. Karen was standing across the street again, clipboard in hand, pretending to inspect a flower bed. The officer who responded told us it would need to be escalated to the HOA board, and that unless there was video of the actual act, it might be hard to prove assault. But I had something better than proof. I had purpose. That night, after Lily fell asleep, her scraped hands bandaged, her tear-streaked cheeks dried, I sat at my desk and stared at the file drawer I hadn't opened in a long time. Inside were copies of affidavits I'd written on behalf of abused children, case notes, photos, interviews, court orders, a whole lifetime of fighting for the innocent. I wasn't just a father. I was a federal-level child protection officer with clearance, credentials, and connections. And now, Karen had crossed into my territory. I began to draft a complaint, but not just any complaint. I contacted the ADA. I filed a formal grievance with our state civil rights commission. I contacted a lawyer from an abuse survivors nonprofit I used to work with. I sent a detailed letter to the HOA board documenting every instance, every note, every citation, every quote. I printed transcripts from the ring footage, collected eyewitness accounts from the few neighbors who still had a conscience, built a timeline, attached Lily's medical records, the ramp permit, the letters Karen sent to the school. I packaged it all, and then I made one final call to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the federal one. Because what Karen didn't know is that, in the eyes of the law, what she had done wasn't just bullying. It was federally recognized discrimination against a disabled child. And I wasn't just a parent looking for revenge. I was the storm that people like her never see coming. The first ripple hit the HOA boardroom before the storm fully arrived. It was a quiet Thursday morning when Karen received the certified letter. I know this because I watched her through my blinds as she walked back from her mailbox, turning the envelope in her hand with a puzzled frown. She stood still for a moment, then stormed inside, slamming her door hard enough to rattle the wind chimes on her porch. What she held in her hand was no ordinary complaint. It was a formal legal notification from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, a full civil rights inquiry filed under the Fair Housing Act, citing systemic harassment and discrimination against a child with a disability. And it bore my signature. The next day, the HOA president email thread exploded. A meeting was called within 48 hours, mandatory. I was copied in the thread as the affected party. I accepted the invitation and marked the date on the calendar, circling it in red ink. The day I stopped being the quiet neighbor. The day Karen finally met the real me. The meeting was held in the Willow Creek Clubhouse, the one with the staged fireplace and awkwardly cheerful welcome neighbors sign on the door. It was packed, not just with board members, but with residents who had caught wind of what was coming. Some came out of curiosity, others out of guilt. I walked in calmly, not alone. To my left was my wife, Mel, fierce-eyed and steady. To my right, our attorney, a disability rights expert with a calm demeanor and a stack of documents tucked under her arm like loaded ammo. Karen sat stiffly at the far end of the table, arms crossed, a tight smile pressed into her lips like wax. But her eyes flicked between us nervously. "Let's begin," the acting board chair said, voice uncertain. I stood and handed each board member a printed packet, timeline of documented incidents, copies of every citation, and note screen captures of ring footage, sworn statements from neighbors, an official letter from the Department of Housing, medical confirmation of Lily's disability, proof of HOA, permit approvals for all modifications. Then I spoke. "I'm here not as a neighbor, but as a father," I began, "and also as a federal child protection officer. Someone who has spent his entire career defending children from abuse, discrimination, and cruelty in all its forms." Karen shifted uncomfortably. I paused and let that sit. For over a year, my daughter has been systematically harassed, marginalized, and humiliated under the guise of community standards, all spearheaded by one person. I looked directly at her. "Karen." Someone in the back gasped. I continued. "My daughter, who lives with a disability, was told she couldn't play outside. Her mobility ramp was labeled an eyesore. Her chalk drawings were labeled graffiti. She was accused of being a public safety hazard for how her wheelchair moved on the sidewalk. And finally, she was physically tipped out of her chair and forced to crawl home. Because someone here believed power gave them the right to abuse a child, I heard someone say, "Oh my God," under their breath. I let my lawyer explain the legal implications. Violation of the Fair Housing Act civil rights, breach violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, creation of a hostile housing environment, risk of federal fines, and HOA liability grounds for a personal civil lawsuit against Karen herself. Karen tried to interrupt, her voice shaking. "This is being taken out of context," she said. "There were neighborhood concerns. Safety. Standards. No," I said firmly. "There was only your concern and your obsession with control. You use this HOA as a weapon to attack a child." One of the board members stood up. "Karen, is this true?" Karen started to stammer, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The board chair cleared his throat. "We're suspending Karen effective immediately, pending full review. Legal counsel will guide us through compliance. And to you," he turned to me, "we deeply apologize. This is not what our community stands for." But I wasn't finished. "I'm filing a civil lawsuit," I said clearly, "not for money, but for accountability, and to make sure this never happens again to anyone. Because when you allow one person to silence a child like mine, you tell the world she doesn't matter, that her life is lesser. And I refuse to let that message stand." There was no applause, no cheers, just a heavy, aching silence, like a house finally realizing it had termites in the walls. Karen stood up suddenly. "This is insane. They're lying." "I didn't mean to. You tipped over a wheelchair," Mel said, stepping forward. "She's 9. What were you trying to prove?" Karen's voice cracked. "I was just trying to keep the rules. You broke something bigger than any rule," I said. "And now it's your turn to answer for it." Within weeks, a restraining order was issued. Karen was removed from the HOA board permanently. The HOA received a formal warning from HUD and was required to attend mandatory disability inclusion training. A community apology was issued, but more than that, the neighborhood changed. Lily received handwritten letters from kids on the street. "You're awesome. Your wheelchair is cool." One neighbor replaced the sidewalk chalk set she'd lost. Another painted a tiny wooden sign for our flower bed that read, "Lily's garden, no bullies allowed." Lily smiled again. She went back to the park, back to the porch, back to herself. Karen eventually sold her house. No farewell party, no cupcakes, just a moving truck and the final sound of her door slamming shut for the last time. We stood on our porch and watched her go. I looked down at Lily. "You okay, baby?" She smiled, nodded, and whispered, "We won." And I knew she didn't just mean the lawsuit. She meant the right to exist, to play, to live without fear. And in that moment, as the truck disappeared down the street, I knew that no matter what title I held, officer, father, protector, the most important thing I'd ever done was help my daughter stand tall, even if she had to do it sitting down. After the storm came stillness. Not peace, at least not right away, but a silence so sharp it rang in our ears. A different kind of quiet, one without tension, without that constant pressure that had settled over our home like smoke. Karen was gone. Her name was no longer whispered at meetings. Her clipboard no longer patrolled the sidewalks. Her gaze no longer hovered behind curtains like a judgmental ghost. And for the first time in months, my daughter slept through the night. No nightmares, no tears, just sleep. Mel and I would sit on the porch some evenings, still too wired to go to bed, sipping tea as the sun set over the cul-de-sac. The silence between us said everything. We were recovering, yes, but we were also grieving the version of our life we thought we had, the version we had to fight tooth and nail to reclaim. The version Karen tried to strip away. Lily bounced back faster than we did. She had that childlike resilience that makes you believe in miracles. The day after Karen's moving truck left, she asked if we could repaint her wheelchair rims. I want glitter this time, she declared confidently. And maybe flames. Like a race car. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. We drove straight to the craft store. Bit by bit, color returned to her life. She went back to drawing on the sidewalks, filling our block with chalk suns and smiley faces. She started inviting Emmy over again, and their giggles once again echoed through the yard. But there were still signs of the trauma, moments when she paused at the mailbox, hesitant, waiting for someone to tell her she couldn't be there. Sometimes she still asked, "Is it okay if I go out?" Even when she was just heading to the flower bed. Every time, we reminded her, "This is your home. No one gets to take that from you again." Our neighbors changed too. Some came with apologies, real, sincere ones. They admitted they hadn't known how far things had gone, that they'd looked the other way too long. That silence had made them complicit. Others didn't speak, but began to show it in small ways. Waving again, leaving small gifts on our porch, inviting Lily to birthday parties, helping us decorate the street for Halloween. For the first time, it felt like the community was learning. The HOA, now under new leadership, adopted a revised policy, one that explicitly prioritized inclusion, accessibility, and anti-discrimination measures. They even launched a monthly accessibility spotlight newsletter to highlight ways the neighborhood could be more inclusive to all residents. They asked me to contribute. At first, I wasn't sure. I had spent my whole career protecting children behind the scenes, never wanting the spotlight. But this was different. This was for Lily, and kids like her. So I agreed. I wrote a piece titled, "The Right to Belong, Why Accessibility is Not a Favor, It's a Right." I spoke about dignity, about space, about how power unchecked becomes poison. I shared how a little girl was humiliated for existing and how we all had to take responsibility for what we allow in our communities. It was printed, framed, hung in the HOA office. Lily saw it one day while walking past. "That's my dad's article," she told someone proudly. "He saved me." I didn't cry in front of her. But that night, alone in my study, I wept. Because I hadn't saved her. She saved me. She reminded me why I do what I do, why I fight, why I refuse to stay silent. She reminded me that the hardest battles are the ones closest to home. Mel, and I still check in with her regularly. She's in therapy now, not because she's broken, but because even the strongest kids deserve a safe space to talk, to process. She's learning how to use her voice, how to advocate for herself. She asked if she could join the school's peer support team next year to help other kids who feel left out. She's going to change the world. Mel whispered one night, tucking her into bed. "She already has," I said, and it's true, because this story didn't end with a lawsuit or a resignation. It ended with a girl, bruised, humiliated, and hurting, crawling across a sidewalk and rising stronger than anyone expected. Because when Karen tipped that chair, she thought she was pushing down weakness. What she didn't know was that she had awakened a warrior, not just in my daughter, but in every person who saw what happened and vowed never again. If you've watched this story all the way through, thank you. Thank you for bearing witness to what happened to my daughter and to so many others like her who face injustice, humiliation, and silence every single day. Lily's story isn't unique. It's a reality for countless children and adults living with disabilities, facing discrimination masked as rules or community standards. It's the invisible battle many fight, quietly, hoping someone will stand up for them. Today, I stand for her. I stand for every child told they don't belong, every parent who watches helplessly, every neighbor who feels powerless. Here's the truth: disability is not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not a reason for exclusion or cruelty. It's a call to compassion, a call to justice. Communities thrive when they embrace every member, when they make space for difference instead of punishing it. And here's what you can do. If you see discrimination, call it out. If you know a neighbor who needs support, be their ally. If your HOA or community enforces rules that hurt others, demand change. If you have the power, use it to protect the vulnerable, not silence them. My daughter's journey from crawling like a dog under Karen's orders to standing strong today is proof that courage wins. That love wins. That truth wins. But none of it happens without people willing to act. So, I ask you, don't turn away. Don't stay silent. Share this story. Talk about it. Fight for those who can't yet fight for themselves. Because when we protect the weakest among us, we build a world where everyone can stand tall, no matter what. And if you want to hear more stories of courage, injustice, and triumph, subscribe to this channel. Together, we can make a difference. Remember, Karen thought she could break my daughter. She had no idea who I was. But more importantly, she had no idea who Lily really is. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay kind, and keep fighting.